Mm.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest talk in the Healthy Hormone series. And today my guest speaker is another Sally, and she's actually over in South Africa, and we've just had a lovely chat about all things health, coaching, relationships, business before we've come on to record this for you. And Sally's work is focused around helping people with relationships, wellness and career. And she's that person who'll be there beside you when you know you need to make a change and you just can't quite make that next step yourself. So like most of us under lockdown, she is working online, and I will provide her links at the end of this or alongside when the video goes out. And today we're going to be talking about Sally's experience with fibroids and finding out about some surgery she had that actually changed her life. So welcome, Sally. Lovely to meet you.
Thank you.
And
thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about how you came to realize that you had fibroids and what age you were and how it kind of manifested for you?
I had been feeling really tired, and I went to see my GP, and I had low iron. So I was about 45 or so. I had low iron, and he asked me all the usual questions and everything. He said, did I have heavy periods? And I was like, no, I think they're normal. So just a side note there is, when someone says to you, do you have normal periods or do you have heavy periods? We don't really have a comparison, do we?
No.
It's like, well, my experience is my experience. It didn't seem any different from my normal periods. And at that time, it wasn't just, my periods weren't that different. So I just answered, yes, they're normal. What I've subsequently learned is as the story unfolds, long after this, I actually went online and I Googled, what does a normal period look like? How many tampons might you use? How many sanitary towels might you use? Or menstrual cup, how many times would you empty it? Whatever you're using. And that was quite useful, but I never ever thought of that.
Yeah.
And me, by the way, with a background in nursing, you would have thought I might have known even or have thought to go and find that out, but I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking...
Sorry, can I just interject there? Because this is why I do this work. Because when I was studying Chinese medicine, I learned that so many women have an abnormal period, but because it's so common that women don't have a normal period, we just think it is normal. Like you said, you don't have anything to compare it to. Maybe your mum or your sisters or whoever had awful periods, and we just accept that this is how it is, suck it up and deal with it. And it is not the case. And I am on a mission to tell women it's not the case. So very briefly, a normal period is around 3 to 5 days. Often women have a heavy flow on the first day or two. If you're heavy, would be considered if you're having to change your sanitary wear, and between 1 and 2 hours after a new tampon or whatever, that's heavy. If you're not having to change it all day or for hours at a time, that's on the light side, and that's a different kind of health imbalance which also needs addressing. Also things like clots in the blood, pain, gushing, terrible cramps, they're not normal. Maybe a little bit of mild backache, maybe a bit of stomach ache, maybe feeling tired. Yes, those things are normal. But anything where you can't exercise or you have to take time off work or you have to go to bed, not normal. Don't put up with it. Come into my group after this and talk to me about it, because I can help you. Anyway, back to you, Sally. So you saw the doctor, you discovered you did have heavy periods. And
well, I didn't know at that point. So I just knew that I had a blood test, and I knew that my hemoglobin and my iron count was low. So I started on supplemental iron. And again, I have a very healthy diet. For years and years, we haven't eaten additives. We're pretty much vegetarian. We eat meat from time to time. But so, it's quite a healthy, non-additive diet, very conscious of what we eat and so on. So I started taking iron supplements. again, there's some iron supplements that cause constipation and leave you feeling nauseous, and the others that aren't. And medical practitioners aren't always so good about telling you what your choices are, and you will pay a lot more for the elemental ions that your body handles well, but the cost in terms of your lifestyle and the nausea and the constipation that comes with the cheap iron are not worth it. That's just an important piece of information.
Yeah.
I took iron for ages, but I started to feel quite listless quite regularly, and I sort of would wake up thinking, oh, when can I have a power nap? Just 20 minutes, and it'll get me through the day. And then I went and I had a routine colonoscopy at around age 50. And when I was there, I said to him that I'd suffered from anemia for quite some time, because I'd gone back and had regular tests, but my HB would come up a little bit and my iron levels would come up a little bit, but there was nothing marked. There was no marked improvement, and I could feel it in my body. Anyway, this guy was curious as to why did I have a low HB and why I had it for so long. And again, he asked the question, do you have heavy periods? No, I don't. I say, I think they're just normal. Yeah. Anyway, he tested my iron and he said, no, you need an iron infusion. So I'm like, okay, I'll have an iron infusion. So I had an iron infusion. He said, well, from here we can track what's going on. So I had an iron infusion, felt way better, absolutely transformative. Not a very natural approach, I have to say, but it was transformative. And I was really well for about a year. And then I had got those same listless feelings coming back. And so I checked in with him again, and he said, no, you need another iron infusion. He said, but something's going on. So he did some other tests thinking I've got to be losing blood from somewhere. Everything around my gut came out normal, so there was no question there. Anyway, I hadn't been for a gynae checkup for a very long time. You don't really want to know how long I had been for a gynae checkup. But off I went, because at this point, I started to notice that my periods had become progressively worse. And you just mentioned if you're having to change any sanitary wear within 2 hours, there's a problem. Yeah, well, I began to feel like I could barely go out without risking leaking, no matter how much I'd kind of padded up and tampon duct and everything up. And so I went to see him, and he said to me, he did an ultrasound, and he said, oh, you've got fibroids, and your uterus is the size of a 6-month pregnant uterus. And he asked me more details about my period. And of course, when I described to him what was happening, he said, you have a heavy menstrual flow and your fibroids are huge, and that is why you are living with this problem.
And actually, can I just ask, so if you were sort of 50, 51, that is the average age of menopause. So did you, perhaps you were thinking, is this menopause? Or, like, are these symptoms, the tiredness and the so on, is it because I'm menopausal? And did you, or no, it didn't?
To be honest, I hadn't been thinking that, because I felt so young in general, aside from the side issue.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I want to bring in, and I'm sure that you work with somatic awareness and somatic intelligence, which is really around body intelligence. And we talk so much about cognitive intelligence and emotional intelligence, but I think one of the things that we just are not educated a lot on is somatic intelligence, which is really about understanding that our body is communicating with us all the time, and it's sending us such loud messages frequently, and yet our capacity to ignore them is extraordinary. Or let me say that my capacity, because I can only own it for myself, but I've also seen with clients, our inability to listen to what our bodies are saying. And I think I've always prided myself on being quite resilient as a result of various life experiences. I can get up and I overcome, and I just keep going. So I can do this. But the downside of that is that I dumbed down to what my body was telling me. Because if I stand back now and look at what was going on, if I'd been paying attention to what my body was saying, I would have gone, this is absolutely not normal.
Yeah.
People of my age shouldn't be like thinking to themselves after a good night's sleep, I can't wait for the power nap.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense that one would be changing, leaking endlessly during a menstrual period. And, like I'm an intelligent woman, I know how to manage things.
But it's because, like I said, so many women experience this that it's quite likely you might chat to your friend and go, oh, my period's really heavy, and there's like, yeah, me too, it's rubbish, isn't it? But that's as far as it goes. And I sometimes use the example that, if you had a sore shoulder every single month, for a few days a month, that stopped you from doing all your normal stuff and was a constant source of pain and anguish, you wouldn't go, oh, well, it's just because I'm a woman, or this is what I have to, my cross to bear. You'd go and get it sorted, and everybody around you would be saying, you need to get that looked at. So why do we do this to ourselves around our menstrual cycle, which is such a central governing force in our life? That is this thread that it we start in puberty and we come off the other end of it in our 50s, but even beyond that, we still have hormones. It's not like the hormones disappear just because you've gone through menopause. So I think it's fascinating, and I also see lots of clients, and I would include myself sometimes too, that we get something wrong with us, and I think sometimes it just builds up very gradually until it's not like you woke up one day and you couldn't wait to go back to sleep. You just started to feel a little bit tighter and a little bit tighter until you got to that point, and then you're just like, oh, now
it's like the frog in the pot, isn't it?
Yeah.
You put the frog in the pot and the water's cold, and as you heat it up, it just gets used to it, it stays in the pot. But if you put a frog into a boiling water pot, it'll quickly jump out, or it will certainly react. So on that, I mean, if I'm thinking about who we're talking to this morning, I just want to say to people, if in any way you're questioning what's going on in my physiology with my menstrual cycle, in fact, with any part of your body, and you tend to keep saying to yourself, I'm too busy to make an appointment, or it's not that bad, or it's everyone's stories, as you say, Sally, everybody's period is bad, so it's just one of those things we have to live with. Really want to encourage you just to stop and think, maybe even do a body scan where you go through your body and you think, so how am I feeling in the different parts of my body? And does that feel congruent with health? Like when I've been my best self, how have I felt? Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's hard to recall, but sometimes we also need that. So one way to do it would go like, so when I felt really fantastic in my body and I felt well, how did I feel? And how do I feel now? Mm-hmm. And pay attention. Because it's telling us so much about even issues of stress. And what are we really carrying?
Yeah, and actually, before we hit record, I was talking to you about how Chinese medicine sees the emotions as very closely connected to the body, and that actually when women suffer from PMT, it's often down to them bottling up emotions, not dealing with difficult relationships, not dealing with stress in their life. And you then sort of had a bit of an aha moment and went, oh, well, yeah, I had a lot of stress and I was burnt out and I had a couple of bereavements, and so it's like this bucket that starts to fill up with little stones, isn't it? And I think sometimes with health we think that there's just an event or a big thing, and sometimes it is, somebody might be made redundant and then have a sort of mental health crisis, or become depressed or whatever. But often I think most people's experience is that things accumulate and then eventually the bucket gets full and it tips over, and that's usually the point that I see people. And they might have just been sort of putting a sticking plaster on their symptoms and medicating or whatever they were trying to do to manage it. But I really want the viewers to understand that we have a lot of agency over our health, and it isn't just the way it is. Yes, you can link your issues to environmental causes or your situation or whatever, but there are always things you can do to help and improve what's going on. You don't just have to take a drug or get surgery or live with it. So tell us what happened next. You discovered.
So can I just say one more thing in there around that whole theme, is that I think also as women, often we think, well, we just need to make a plan. We're resilient. We can do this. I don't really want to bother a health practitioner because maybe it isn't anything. But I think if we're even asking ourselves that question, maybe I don't want to bother somebody because maybe it isn't anything, it's a good time to go, I am going to bother somebody.
Yeah.
Because we need to remind ourselves that there are people who know a whole lot more than we do and will have a different perspective, such as yourself.
Yeah.
And we have a choice to be able to walk into greater health or to sit with ill health. I can't encourage you guys enough to listen to your bodies and ask for help and reach out when you need to. Anyway, so I saw the gynecologist now sitting there, and he said to me, well, the traditional treatment of this would be hysterectomy, but a colleague of his, so this was at what's called the UCT, the University of Cape Town Private Academic Hospital, so they have quite a lot of cutting edge technology. So he told me that he had a colleague who had started doing, probably 2 years prior to that, something called uterine fibroid embolization. And it's a non-invasive procedure where they put in a catheter. So if you can imagine putting in a drip and then putting a tiny weeny little pipe up through your artery. Only it's an artery, not a vein.
I hate the thought of that.
I don't know about the physiology. Never mind that detail. Yeah. Anyway, so they thread it all the way through this particular artery. It is an artery. And they take it to your uterine artery. So we have an artery. Of course, an artery is what keeps our organs alive because it gives oxygenated blood. They go to the uterine artery, and then they feed this catheter into the blood supply that is supplying the fibroid. And then through this catheter, they shoot little pieces of sand, which then block the arteries. Now, as you can imagine, if you block the arteries to any organ, the organ doesn't get any blood, so it can't grow and it can't even stay in life, and so it dies. So it's non-invasive. It takes no time at all. It's done in some special lab. And yeah, it was sort of done in an hour under conscious sedation. And afterwards, I do have to just say, it's totally worth the intervention. I wouldn't look back on it. I wouldn't change my mind at all because it changed my life, and I'll tell you that part now. But it's hell of a sore. It's very sore because muscle that doesn't get oxygenated blood is dying, and it's called ischemic pain. So it's like the muscle is dying, and it's jolly sore. But anyway, there's medicine for.
How long did that go on for?
I think I was a little bit unlucky. Interestingly, before chatting with you today, I just went to do a bit more reading. I think the technology's probably changed because this was sort of 4 years ago. It was very sore for about 3 days. And when I left the hospital, they said, oh, just take whatever you would have taken for period pains. And I said, oh, okay, I'll just take some Miprodol. I don't know if you have Miprodol or Genpain. It's a similar drug for the pain. And I took it, and it was next level sore. So I needed to get more. But after 3 days, it was pretty much gone. But normally, I think 24 hours pain is what you would expect. But
well, if you have a hysterectomy, I mean, the recovery period is 6 weeks. You're not allowed to drive or lift anything or so on. And you're going to be thrown headlong into menopause. So this sounds like maybe 3 days of pain was definitely a preferable option.
That's a good perspective. I actually hadn't thought about that because when he offered me, I had the choice of either treatment. For me, it was a no-brainer having the fibroid embolization. Anyway, I thought to myself, well, I wonder how long it'll take to make a difference. Well, my next period, it was like a completely different event. And I couldn't believe that I'd lived as long as I had with these heavy periods that had then got progressively worse over the years. But even going back to when this had all started, I thought that was a normal period.
Yeah.
This is a normal period.
And
this is like, it's like a walk in the park, literally. I thought about it like a walk in the park. Anybody can do this. This is a period. Anybody can do a period. It's like a non-event.
Yeah.
So I can't say more strongly than this, that if you have periods that you think these are really uncomfortable, they're difficult to manage, I'm not sure this is normal. Something's wrong. Find out. Well, I mean, come to you, Sally, because I'm sure that you have some acupuncture or some alternative processes that are possible, and to explore other reasons. But certainly I would say it's something worth asking about. So even in South Africa, when I say even in South Africa, I don't know how much it's been done in the UK and other parts of the world, but it's not a common procedure. And I know that some gynecologists don't even seem to know about the procedure. So it is something one needs to ask about. So it's called uterine fibroid embolization. Yeah,
I'll do some research on that, because I have no idea, but I do know that they say something like 20 to 80% of women will have fibroids by the time they're age 50. So it seems to be something that is more common as you get older. It is connected to hormones, so they don't completely understand why these masses start to kind of grow on the uterine wall, and as you've described, they can be really painful, they can get really big, and I suspect that in this country the treatment might be just to sort of surgically remove them or give you a hysterectomy. But obviously if you're one of the sort of unluckier ones who's got them at a younger age, I mean, it's not nice at any age, but if you're hoping to have a family or something and you've got them and you're trying to deal with that, then you definitely need to get it looked at and sorted. And I mean, what a story of transformation from this one procedure. I mean, I think it sounded quite unpleasant to me. I don't like the thought of things being threaded around, but obviously it worked. And
no, that part was really easy. And really, it's like, maybe reframe that one in case you ever need it, Sally. It's quite a simple intervention. It's just like having a catheter put in, briefly. Like we have catheters put into our uterus, or into our bladder or whatever. But But that one of the things, if you are younger and you are experiencing really heavy periods, so interesting with fibroids, sometimes there is severe pain associated with them and sometimes there isn't pain associated. So if you've got either symptom that is seeming abnormal, go and have it, chat to you to see what are the possibilities. And if there are fibroids, there are fantastic stories of women who were unable to conceive, who had the treatment and have subsequently gone on to have families, which is amazing. And if my experience was transformative, imagine how transformative that is.
And also I think, to bring it back to the work that you do now, is that when I love it when I give people treatments, because I can't at the moment because we're recording this during lockdown. I haven't given a treatment for over a month, and when I have a client come in and then they come back the next week and their whole face looks completely different because they're not in any pain or they're in less pain and they've managed to sleep, and or quite often people say, my colleagues aren't annoying me anymore, or my my boss was really nice to me or something. And it's just, when we can change in ourselves, then our reaction to everything around us changes. And if you're going every month through pain and discomfort, and it is concerning, even if you're not sort of consciously thinking, oh, this is a problem, I need to sort it out, probably on some level you'll know that things aren't quite right, and then that does have an impact on your relationships. And so getting yourself sorted out, you're doing a massive service to everybody around you as well as yourself, to just have a happy family life, have a happy work life, so that you can be a fully functioning member of society and my nutrition teacher used to say that we should not really be aware of our bodies. So in the sense that when we're completely healthy and balanced, we're free to be in our minds and hatch great plans and inspiration and visions that we can then properly execute, so does that make sense?
That's a lovely, I mean, it's such an interesting way of framing it, and it is quite lovely. I mean, imagine if we didn't have to think endlessly about our bodies because they were in sync.
Yeah.
But because most of ours aren't always in sync, I want to go back to the thing of listen to your body, because your body's talking to you and it's really wanting you to wake up to it. Yeah. And I think just one other thing around that, because you were talking about, going and being with colleagues and suddenly everybody's a whole lot nicer out there. I think some of it is also when we can stop and be kinder to ourselves and more compassionate towards ourselves. So instead of like if we have PMS, or when we then become judgy of ourselves and like, oh, can't you get this together? And, everybody has a period, so, it can't be that bad, or whatever our narrative becomes, where there's like an irritation with ourselves. And as a result, we then ignore what's going on inside of ourselves. We can just look at each other and go, gosh, that must be horrible. Like to ourselves, almost to say, it's not nice to feel like this.
No.
What's really going on with your body? Almost like speak to ourselves as we would to a friend. Because how we speak to ourselves and our bodies is certainly not how we would speak to our friends.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
If your friend actually has terrible period pains, I'm going to go, oh, come on, get over yourself. It's probably nothing.
Yeah.
You're more likely to go, gosh, tell me more. And have you spoken to anybody about it? Or did you think about contacting? That would be our response. So kind of that encouragement, just talk to ourselves as we would to a friend.
Yeah. And I think all of this whole series that I'm doing, I'm really keen to encourage the viewers to help them realise that they're not alone. There are lots of people, other women who've experienced what they're going through. And, there are lots of different treatment options. There are lots of different it always makes me laugh a bit, I think, when people come to see me, because sometimes people go, I've tried everything, and they never have tried everything. But sometimes we don't even know what else is out there, what other help. So you can see somebody like me, or you can see somebody like you, and like you said, it just having that other pair of eyes on your situations, because sometimes we're just right in the trenches and we can't even lift our head to survey the landscape and think, is this the only way that I can get through this life of mine, or is there another way? And and I know that there are always other ways, and that's what's so rewarding to work with people in this way, because we all deserve to have a happy life that's very fulfilled, and to be able to even I was talking to someone yesterday who said, I really want to get my cycle sorted because one of my symptoms is having terrible numbness. She said, I can't get on the floor to play with my 6-year-old because my hands and feet go so numb, and I haven't got the energy to go for a run or, to play with him like I want to. Well, that's really sad. And, he's missing out and she's missing out. So I'm going to get her sorted out. But anyway, it's been fascinating talking to you, and I'm sure that I've certainly learnt a lot about fibroids, because and that new kind of treatment. So I'm definitely going to go and look that up. And where can people find you if they would like to look into what you offer?
So my Facebook page is Sally Bingham. If you just wanted to send it, that would be the easiest way to, it's not a business page, it's a personal page, but it would be the easiest way just to send me a message. Alternatively, if you go to my website, it's www.red, the color red, stepcoaching.co.za. So redstepcoaching.co.za. And there's a contact button there. And if anybody is out there and you think to yourself, I'd love to find out more about the UFE, then do just send me a message, and I'd be so happy to have a quick chat with you about my experience and to answer the questions. I'm not an expert, not professional, but just from my personal experience of going through, I'd be very happy to connect.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks so much for sharing your story with us, and I look forward to seeing you online more, and hopefully we'll talk again in future.
Thank you, Sally.
Take care. Bye for now.
Bye.